It's 17:15, 5:15. It's the end of the day. I'm the last talk, and you're all just sort of sitting. But I know what you really wanted. You really wanted to do, obviously. But there are students in the room, so I don't encourage underage drinking. So I'm gonna skip the whole 30-minute thing has been a lot of people on the butt today. So I'm just gonna skip my usual introduction, put that at the end, and if I do have enough time at the end, you'll actually know who the heck I am. But let's get started. So I'm going to talk about designing your own open source project. This is not just making it pretty, but to start, why bother with open source? And it's not because Bryan Gosling uses open source. This image is from a site that puts quotes, like they're pickup lines. This one says, "Hey girl, I've always thought my heart to be an immutable list of immutable objects until I met you." Awesome site. Tumblr is just an amazing site, not powered by Python, unfortunately. What? No. Open source is about collaboration. It's about creating something, putting it out there, and having people work on it, having people contribute to it, creating a community. We've talked a lot today about how Python is about community. It's also about validation, and validation through education. You put code out there, it's not necessarily good code, but then you have people, on GitHub, for instance, submitting pull requests. And those pull requests, or those, if you don't know what a pull request is pretty much, I fork one of Danny's projects, and I happen to do something a little better, a little different than he does. Doesn't happen in real life. But then he can accept it and then learn from that code. So it's that validation that either you're badass or you need to learn something. And it's just the feelings of awesome. I've been a designer for 14, 15 years now, and I've only gone into development in the last 5 or so. But once I built my first program, it's just like, yes! It's that feeling of immense, like, this is great. This is an amazing feeling. You just want to keep doing more of it. That's why people love open source. And, hi Danny, GitHub, for instance, is your new portfolio. Your line of work in open source is open for everybody to see. So it is really your history and an open book as to what you do in your journey through open source. Oh wait, whose company doesn't do open source? Who has a company that doesn't do open source? Us? Okay, one. So for you, I'll be talking directly to you for this instance, and I run into this all the time. This is what I feel like when a company just doesn't want to do open source, and it's the higher ups get you down. They don't understand what open source is, and you know what? I feel you, bro. And let me fix this for you, and I'm going to have one of my bosses, Tom Preston Werner, do the talking for me. You read the quote up here, but pretty much open source, you can tell your boss this, you can link the link to his post, which is a good piece of prose on the subject, is linked in the slides, which will be up later. Pretty much saying that open source is one, it's great advertising. At GitHub, where I work, we open source almost 85 to 90% of the stuff that we work on. And by open sourcing those things and allowing collaboration to happen, we're actually able to have outside people not only use our software to make their lives easier, they're actually making our lives easier by contributing things to us. Rescue, which is a Ruby-powered Ruby-powered Q library, actually has 135 contributors to that after we open sourced it, and numerous fixes have come because of that. So with that popularity, that if you really got a great open source project on your hands, like Django project, then it becomes like this force, this multiplier that starts to grow out of control. You get all this popularity, for lack of a better word, advertising, more people getting interested in it, more people looking at the code, more people wanting to improve on it. So open source is just the right thing to do, and the link to Tom's talk is right there. So getting to the nitty gritty of it, I'm going to talk about 3 things. I'm going to talk about designing the purpose of your open source application, designing the documentation, and designing the promotion. So the purpose. From a low level, I'm not going to go over this too much because we've had a lot of lower level talks today, you're obviously going to be writing this in Python. You're obviously going to have that database that you're going to want to pick. Technology isn't what I'm going to focus on here. It's more the high level stuff. Number one, fix your problems first. The best software, time and time again, the best software that has been created is fix that person, that author's problems first, whether it's a stats program or GitHub. GitHub was created by 4 guys who were tired of not being able to collaborate on code. So they built this on weekends because they still had jobs. And then they were able to make it into the company that it is today. Now, questions you ask yourself: can you support this open source project? I've been on the top of one of those. Does that count me as a real Filipino or not? I'll get to that later. But can you support this project? Can you take care of the requests that come in for help? You have a lot of people loving to create software but hating to support it. So then you have people collaborate with you to take care of support requests. Delegate any of the things that you don't want to do to other people that want to do them for you. Exit strategies, and this is something that I don't see many people go over. If by any instance you get tired of this project, will there be an exit strategy for you? Because the project, good or bad, just shouldn't die unless there is a necessity, unless it is necessary to die, unless it has to, because there's something either better out there that you decided that you should use and should deprecate your own piece of software, or you just don't want to work on it anymore, in which case you should find another maintainer and just not let it die. You have people that depend on your project. So moving on to methodologies. So for instance, what's your contribution model going to be? You're going to do pull requests or a mailing list with patches like Git does, but no, actually you're just going to use pull requests on GitHub. Is it going to be a test-driven development, or behavior-driven development, or beer-driven development, or cola driven development? Safe stuff. Licenses, and this is something that I personally am still confused heck about. I usually just throw an MIT license on it, and okay, somebody does something to it, I'm like, okay, well, add it. That's it. But then you have Apache licenses, you have BSD, you have the GPL and the AGPL and stuff like that. I put a link up here to a site that does go over a bit about each license and why you should choose it, depending on what sort of contribution model and then attribution model that you want for your project. And where should I host it?
No.
Simplest question ever. One more thing: if you test, and you should test, use this site. TravisCI.org is a continuous integration server that is in the cloud. So what it does is that you connect it to your project that has tests, and it'll run your tests for you every time you commit. And every time somebody submits a pull request, it'll send a bot over to your pull request on GitHub, and it'll say if your test passed or failed. It is an amazing piece of software that they just opened up for the Python community. It's been working for the Ruby community for about a year and a half now. Amazing piece of software. Every single open source project should be using this. Unfortunately, they don't support private projects yet. So we're going to move on to designing the documentation. And the reason this is its own bit in my talk is because Python is known for epic documentation. The single thing, if you're going to go to a Ruby talk or a Ruby versus Python talk, or just a conference in general, you'll always see in Python talks documentation. READMEs. This is my first point of contact with your project. Always have a good README. Tell me what your project is, a synopsis of what it is, a tweet. If you're going to tweet me what your project is, that should be the first line of your README. Then tell me how to install it easily. Copy, little code samples if it requires, if it's a Django module that requires settings. I should be able to know what those settings are in the README. I shouldn't have to dig through the code in order to see that. You wouldn't want to run into a project with no README, so why, put that burden on anybody else? We've gone over doc strings earlier. Use your doc strings. Document every single piece, every class, every function, every method that you can. And while you can test out of these, it's not really recommended anymore in favor of unit tests. Sphinx is a piece of software that pretty much powers all of Python's documentation, or documentation for Python projects around the globe, including projects that aren't Python either. It's just such a powerful documentation system that you have Ruby projects using it, and projects of other languages like Objective-C, etc., using this software, which is powered for, which uses restructured text, and it has auto documentation methods. If you use doc strings and you run auto documentation function on your code, then it'll actually print out nice documentation for you, which you can then host on readsdocs.com, which was a site created by Eric Holscher, who worked at the place where Django was born at Media for Media. And it is an amazing site that pretty much hosts documentation. And every Django project that I know of is hosted up there. It's free, it's easy. If you push up your documentation from GitHub, Bitbucket, wherever else, it'll automatically update on here. And there's no reason not to do that. So some examples of great documentation sites, and I have two. docs@djangoproject.com. Epic documentation. And if it's not, if the documentation isn't good, it'll be made better by the hundreds of contributors, Danny included, when it comes to the class-based view stuff, right? That's on that site. It's just an amazing example of how great and how in-depth documentation should be for a larger Python project. And a micro framework called Fly to go with it. That's actually open source as well, if you'd like to make your docs look like that. So moving on from that, we're designing the promotion of your open source project. And seriously, readmes. If this is the only thing you do, if you make a good readme, that's promotion enough. There are projects out there that have been linked that I would never use, but I sit myself down and read the readme. I don't get a single thing about it, but it's just that interesting. And those links spread, and it's just this perpetual nature that goes about by just reading stuff that's interesting. If your project's interesting enough, make it interesting. You think your project's good enough. Again, you have no excuse not to do it. And seriously, epic documentation. It's promotion in and of itself. Mentioned at conferences again. It's just perpetual loop. You can make a mini site, and making a mini site is as easy as buying a domain name, and CNaming it to your documentation. Or you can create something like Django Haystack, which is created by Daniel Linsky. And it's a great little mini site that goes above and beyond documentation. I know I have a slide here, of course. Or you can recruit a designer, but not me. I'm way too in over my head for this stuff. But on the subject of designers, and I'm gonna ask, how many people in here work with a designer on a regular basis? I see 3, 5.
How about you?
3 hands go. Okay. So one of the reasons I'm actually standing here today is because I had a talk at PyCon about designers and developers understanding each other. And I know for a fact that the Philippines has a very, very vibrant designer community called Philweavers, which I'm a part of. And we can work together. There's this weird notion about designer and developer relations that designers don't understand developers don't understand designers. It's like, oh, just make it pretty. Just go ahead and go into Photoshop. You can just swatch that over, right? At the same thing, it's like, yeah, you can just write 3 lines of code and it'll work. Okay? It's the same argument, just with different reasoning. But it's the same general argument. And I only realized this when I started to do both. And for the hybrids out there, anybody do both? For the hybrids that are out there, there's this understanding of why is everybody so hostile to each other when it comes to this stuff. It's, if you can do both, then why can't we just all get along? Seriously. So, you know, if you ever do work with a designer, it's respecting what we do because we envy what you do. I wish I could have like a piece of each of your brains. So I'd be able to create epic software and make it look nice too. I'm so slow when it comes to Django development. I've been, 5 years I said earlier. The amount of projects that I've been able to release, nothing. It's just too much of a perfectionist, or just not enough. But how, and if you ever find yourself in a situation where you need to work with a designer, or a designer wants to work with you, trade, pair program, you know, learn something about design. I know a lot of designers want to learn stuff about development. We all want to build stuff. We all want to make awesome things. Similar. So just help each other out in that sense, because then designers can help you do this. Your boss spewing rainbows into your face because your project is just so amazing. So finally, just a message for the students. Which students are still here? Still students here? Okay. I thought the 40 left and there were no students left. I was crying because I'm like, I had these slides because I knew you guys were here. So some words of motivation for you guys, and get involved now, today. The more time you waste is, you know, the more time you're not filling in that portfolio of work. And even if you're taking, you know, if your studies are taking 90%, take that 10%. You know, Google has the 80s. They have their 20% time in which they allow employees to work on something that they're interested in 20% of the time of their paid hours. Take 20% of your time while you're learning to develop something, solve a need that you have, solve a need that your friends have, and learn from it. And copy this link down, because every student in here, every student, every teacher can be granted a free micro account, which allows you 10 private repositories on GitHub.
Did you know that?
You just have to go there and you have to email them. And usually it's $7 a month plan, $7, which would be 350 pesos about a month. So that'll solve that problem for you. And then you too can be badass. So pretty much just always keep the bar high when you're working with your open source stuff. And I realize this is very fluffy, pie in the sky, pink ponies that created that kind of talk. But what I really want you to take from this is just no matter what skill level you are at, is just to raise that bar. Like today, go home today and raise that bar on any software that you're working on. Get somebody else to help you put it on GitHub, promote it, Twitter, Hacker News, on Reddit, whatever. And now you can go and then go forward and make the web not bad. So we still have time apparently because I talk way too fast. So I'm going to introduce myself now. So hi, my name is Bryan. I'm in LA. That's a picture from my wedding. I'm sure you guys have been to similar weddings where people spend money on other people in exchange for dances. Just felt fitting. No wrong though. I'm a designer / developer, hybrid, if you'd like to say. And developer side, I maintain a Django image kit, which is a little piece of software that allows you to manage uploaded images. Like if you're running a photo gallery site, you need thumbnails. I took this project over from Justin Driscoll, who created the project I fell in love with, and I've also recruited other people to work on it with me, and it's just been going through an immense amount of awesome collaboration in the last year and a half. So I'm 100% Filipino, but I know 0 Tagalog. Hi, Dad. So please, nobody mistake me for that, because I've already fallen twice into like trying to get here. I was in a taxi and the guy's like said blah blah blah, and I'm like, you peed. Okay. And all he said to me later on was, did I stop or something like that? And I'm like, yeah. Didn't get me anywhere near where I needed to be. I was at that, everybody, there's that course where everybody is running, and that's completely far away, and I'm like, you know what, I just looked at my GPS, I'm like, just stop here. I'm like, okay, paid him, got out of the car, and I walked. No, I'm not, so, English, please. I work at GitHub, and there are 30 people missing from this picture. This was taken in January of this year. I think we were about 60, 65, we're now over 100. This is my information. I obviously GitHub, Facebook, Twitter, whatever social network you like to follow, and if you like gaming, I also what they call shoutcast on the side. Like I shoutcast myself sucking at Dota, StarCraft 2, and other things of that nature. And I just have to say, when I was approached by Danny and Audrey, whether or not I should do this talk, I'm actually supposed to be in Florence, Italy right now. But when PyCon Philippines was announced, I pretty much said I can't go to Florence. I mean, I could very well just take off on a plane tonight and fly to Florence, which would literally kill me. But as a Filipino and as a Python developer, I did not want to miss today or anything. Now let's go have beer kind of talk. So if anybody does have any questions, I apparently finished. I was a quick one. That's the quickest talk of the day. Okay, I did you guys a favor. So if you have any questions, just one. Yes.
Is the GitHub logo a cat or a squid wearing a cat?
Yeah. So. Yeah, the OptiCat. That's not it. The OptiCat. That is a cat-octopus hybrid. This is a big point of contention in GitHub. 4 legs, 1 tail. It is not 8. We do not put 8 on there. We've seen it, like the design team, there are about 13 of us, have seen it with 8, and we hate it. Like, people want to make plushies of the OptiCat because it's so amazing, and they try doing it with 8 legs, and just like, no, GTFO. Seriously, we don't want any of that. So the canonical definition for the OptiCat is 4 legs and 1 tail, and it is an OptiCat. It is a cat head with octopus legs.
How about the whiskers?
No, yeah, cat whiskers. Are you saying squids have whiskers? Yes. That is something I'll have to take back to the team because the original image actually, and this is a talk that my colleague Zach Holman gives. He usually introduces how GitHub works and stuff, and the OptiCat is something he introduces. The OptiCat is actually something that the founders had gotten off of iStockphoto.com because they needed a 404 page thing. They needed a logo there because they didn't have anything else. And everybody was like, that's so awesome, that should be your mascot. And we're like, okay. And it got so popular, we just bought the rights for it. So I can blame the original author for that. But, that's a whole talk in itself, and that's one that Zach usually gets. But his first question was about the Windows project. And we always knew, the founders believed that you should be able to access GitHub from anywhere. And because that's Amazon's model with the Kindle, is that you can buy a book. It's not, Amazon doesn't want to sell you Kindles, they want to sell you books. That's why they put Kindle app on the iOS and on Android and on your computer. They want you to buy books. So we thought we should do the same thing. We wanted to put GitHub, an easy GitHub GUI on every platform. So that's how Windows came out. On the other end about how GitHub works, yes, we are a bossless company. I think the 4 founders don't even like to be considered that because they feel like they're on the same level as us. We don't have managers. We don't have project managers. There's nobody there that doesn't touch a line of code or puts pen to paper or sticks a little Photoshop. We all run the company. We're all product pushers. We all push products. If I have an idea, I'll post it. If I get enough people, if I sell my idea to the rest of the team, and I get enough developer power, we just push it through. And we always say to ourselves, we wonder how we've gotten this far doing that, because everybody else is like, you need to have some structure. Well, apparently we don't, and we just wanting to make developers' lives easier, having people collaborate. And since we dog food GitHub all the time, if it's not good for us, then how can it possibly be good for everybody else? And apparently we just haven't gotten to the point where we need managers yet. We're able to product manage ourselves. We're able to triage things ourselves, and we've added where we needed to, with no project managers, no bosses, nobody who doesn't touch anything.